What's up, fellow castaways? Tonight we are talking episode 5, A Cry for Help. Chriselle's got coral growing in her leg. Robbie might have coral growing in his leg. And in studio, we have one of the castaways from the show himself, and we're going to be talking all about his experiences next.
You're tuned in to Afterbuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
This is the song about helping out.
I love this song, Maroon 5.
You do?
Is awesome. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Maroon
need
5.
to stop allowing you
to pick
I
the
do
song.
choose
the
all the
song,
songs.
CJ.
He's always the
I'm
guy.
always doing bangers, though.
I'm with it. But welcome everybody to AfterBuzz TV Competitions. We're talking Castaways tonight, and we have an absolutely awesome show for you tonight. We're going to be breaking down Chriselle's struggle with the coral and her loneliness. We're going to be looking at Tim being a child sex slave cop in the Dominican Republic. I had no idea.
Rescuer.
Plus, we're going to be talking about the interesting trio of Matt, Richard, and Sawyer. And speaking of Matt, we have Matt Jaskol in studio with us.
So happy to be here.
I can't wait for this conversation.
It's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm your host, Michael Patterson, for tonight, and I have a full panel with me. Starting off to my left, the one and only Tehran.
Tehran's in the building.
And Katie.
Hey guys, it's Katie Wolski.
And last but not least, CJ.
What's up?
Awesome, guys. We got a super high energy. I'm super excited. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but it's just great to have you here,
Feel the
Matt. Nice.
vibes.
Thanks for joining us.
Honestly, very excited to be here.
I'm surprised you made it off the island alive. Now, I'm sure we're gonna speak a lot about you and your experiences on the island.
Yes.
But I have a lot of questions, Matt.
I have a lot of answers, especially for you, because of what you just said, that you're surprised I made it off the island. If you're surprised, you're going to be surprised at a lot of things in this show.
Wow. See, that's why we like
That's
the
what we
cast.
want. That's what we want.
Yeah.
But so we're going to talk a little bit before we get into the interview with Matt, knowing about your experiences. We're going to break down the show a little bit. So let's just start off first. CJ, overall thoughts on this episode?
I think this episode actually, it made me like you a lot better because seeing how Sawyer and Richard was treating you, I did not like that, but
CJ's got a heart.
I do have a heart.
Katie?
I'm nervous for Chriselle. Very nervous about that coral infection. I don't want to see her go home.
I thought she was going home this week. I think it's
know,
coming
she's
next
still
week.
sticking
She's
it
due.
out.
She's due. Tehran?
Well, I'm surprised Terry's still alive. And that's why she's my consistent MVP. And I must admit, Matt, that after this episode, that I like you way more than I did previously. But not because of the episode at all, but because you're actually here with us.
And you have to like me more.
Trust me, I don't. But what's going to happen is I appreciate the fact that you came all the way up here to speak to us so we could have an in-depth conversation with you. And that's the part of this show that I'm looking the most forward to.
The tires of my car are still smoking from getting here from Vegas.
I'm sure.
Hey.
I shaved 30 minutes off the GPS. I told CJ, yeah.
That
Nice,
race
that
car
experience
driver.
coming in.
It was that
Yeah.
I was pulling some race car
Yeah.
driver stuff to get here.
Yeah, well, this episode, I really like this episode. It wasn't really one of my favorites. However,
Why?
there just wasn't enough drama there, I guess. I want to see more at this point. At this point in the show, I don't know how many episodes there are, but we're on 5 now. I need to see more drama now. But I liked it because we saw Tim's backstory, and I love the backstory on all
So
this.
you didn't think that the alien growing inside of Chriselle's leg was enough drama?
I wanted to see
Because
more.
The fact
Oh,
that we
God.
saw such a growth in that infection
Yeah.
was so severe to me. And you know who the true MVP of the Castaways
Please do not say
show is?
Terry.
No, it's not just
It's
Castaways.
Kinsey. It's Kinsey.
It's not.
Kinsey.
It's not any of the Castaways actually. It is the sound people and whoever did the soundtrack to the show. Those pianos make you feel so angsty, and then at the same time they play something if someone says something ubiquitous, and yet it makes it sound so meaningful with the piano backdrop. So I hope that if nothing else, they win an award for best sound mixing. I truly do.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. Matt, how many episodes have you seen of the show so far?
None.
None?
I haven't even seen. I only got to see the tail end of I haven't even seen all of episode 5 yet. That's how real it is. We don't get to see. I get that question all the time. Oh, you've seen the whole show, right? I haven't seen anything. There's 10 episodes, by the way.
Okay, interesting.
And I have not seen anything.
Interestingly enough, we also learned that you haven't even met all the castaways.
There's a lot of people I didn't meet.
So who are the people you didn't meet?
I can't really tell you everything, but you only know, that I haven't met, I didn't get to meet Rashawn. I didn't get to meet Tracy.
Angel.
I didn't get to meet Angel. I had his
Who?
bag.
He's a nice guy.
You know what, Angel? Because you're a race car driver, Angel actually got off the island so fast he got a speeding ticket. It's crazy.
You know what? There's a story behind that too of why his journey. It wasn't what a lot of people think. I don't think people give him enough credit. And I was emotional afterwards reading his journal. I was so bitter finding his bag because I thought I was going to have more, and it hardly had anything in it. And then when I learned more about him and about his story and that Rich and Sawyer had met him and what was going on, and even some behind the scenes stuff I can share with you guys that a lot of people don't know out there of why he left, and everybody had a journey out there, and his wasn't to stay, obviously. But I haven't met. I can tell you I've met less than half the people that were out there, So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's tough. It seems like everyone, even if you're surviving well, is struggling at least in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those people that we saw this week was Chriselle. She's got the coral growing in her leg, which that infection looked pretty gnarly. It was bad. But
I still don't know can that happen? Coral
Obviously so. You're watching it unfold. At this point, it's no longer conjecture or an opinion. It is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered the same thing. Coral's a living organism, so it can grow inside your leg, and
they did not warn you guys about that.
Look, they warned us of a lot of things, and it was scary. Okay, and that was part of the mental anguish. Again, going into the show whenever you want me to tell you more about that, but they pulled us. It was so sick and twisted almost how they did things. I mean, they pulled us into a room, and we never knew any other cast members. I was sequestered to a room in Indonesia, in Sarong, in this little third world country, and even beforehand was kind of crazy and cryptic and weird the way they were doing things. It seemed almost shady the way they were doing things. And when we finally traveled to Indonesia, a guy showed up from ABC, or from production actually, and escorted me. I wasn't even allowed to have my passport because it had my visa in it, which would tell you how long you were going to be in the country, which was a pretty damn long period of time on the visa that I found out later, which I probably would have got scared and turned around and been back. I'm going to be gone for how long? But they told you could be gone for a pretty long time.
Probably at least a 6-month visa, I would assume.
It was 90. It was almost 6 months, I think. It wasn't quite 4 months, I think. 4 months working visa, because even that, it wasn't. You're only allowed to have like a 3 at the most, but it was even more. But I found out later. So they hid my passport. I wasn't even smart enough to know why, because if I would have looked in it, I would have seen, I'm going to come home here,
Yeah.
So he traveled with me, and then they moved us into this hotel, and it was like, wait here, don't move, close your eyes. There was other cast members they didn't want you to run into, and then I got thrown in a room, and we were there for like 3 days as they were getting ready to drop us, and they were trying to keep this really intense experience of like, of it being real, of being like shipwrecked or a plane crash. So I'm sitting in a room every day, only for 15 minutes. They knock on the door and say, "Come on, get out." And okay, I got to go downstairs, grab some food, back to my room, and then you got to meet with network. They said the day before they dropped us, and I walk into a room, and it's like 2 New Zealand Special Forces. 2 Navy SEAL medics. Those were our only medics. We didn't have doctors. We had 2 Navy SEAL medics. That's it. And then like the president of legal department from ABC, the creator of the show. And it was kind of like this. And I'm sitting like you guys staring at me. And there's this whole thing. And there's this New Zealand Special Forces, and they were in charge of security and like just kind of patrolling the area and stuff like that. Because you were alone. So many people were like, "Oh, you're not alone. There's a camera guy there." The camera guy was there 6 hours a day at best. They shot with really long lenses. I mean, these people were like in the jungle at times. Like you didn't even see them sometimes, and they would bounce out before the sunset. They're like, "See ya."
They weren't like right in your face at all times?
Sometimes, like when I was on my shelter, yes, there was times he had to be. And interesting story, I had this Canadian camera guy who was he's a badass, and I tried to talk to him. It was a couple days in, I think. I want to say like 3 days in. I'm kind of suffering. I'm sitting alone on the dock, and I was like, "Yo, man," and I wasn't doing anything. I was just trying to survive. I go, "Yo, man, what's your name?" And he looks and he just stared at me, and I was like, "Hello, like where are you from?" And he goes, "Look, man, don't talk to me. I'm not here." And I was like, okay, fine. I mean, they were trying to preserve your experience. So you were more alone than being alone. I would have preferred to be completely alone, because there was a human being standing there, and you wanted to know things, you wanted to talk to somebody, and he would just look at you and say, "Don't talk to me." And you're just like, all right, I
That's
get it.
interesting.
hard.
That
That's
actually
hard.
happens here in Hollywood at the clubs a lot.
That's true.
Will you talk to me,
It's
please?
interesting.
Don't talk to me.
With Chriselle, was it the concept that she was infected, and did her being female play any part into it? Because I feel that I don't know if I would have been as empathetic if Tim or Eric had gotten the same infection.
Well, what about Robbie? He apparently
Robbie-
got scratched by coral.
It seems like it was just a scratch, though.
I know, like
right.
Robbie,
Isn't it only
he's
if it
over.
like pierces?
Yeah, it basically breaks off and becomes an organism in your body. But the thing that was interesting about Chrishell is that despite through all of this struggle, she still is fighting to be there. Because I feel like if I was in that situation, as soon as I had an infection growing in my leg, I'd be out of there. CJ, if you had an infection growing in your leg,
CJ might leave if he broke a nail.
He said he was gonna leave right away, so I don't know why we're asking CJ.
I mean, like, if I was infected, obviously I'm gonna leave, especially if I didn't know all this information that Chrishell did. Yeah, I'm gonna be like, gotta go, peace out.
One of the
Rashawn-
backgrounds of Chrishell is the fact that she grew up on an island and
Yeah.
was acclimated
Yeah.
to a lot of the ailments that could possibly arise from things such as this nature. She had the benefit of that. How she's the one that got infected
It's
still
unfortunate.
bewilders me. It's
Yeah.
ironic.
it's unlucky,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, I mean, unlucky with all of them. Another person we can talk about in this episode that we really got to see a lot from was Tim. And I've been saying on the previous episodes of this after show that I've been wanting to see more backstory from Tim because we really haven't seen anything from him. And we got to see his job, I guess, in the Dominican Republic. Was anybody else surprised by that?
I was super surprised when he said rescuing, like as he did rescuing for a job. I assumed like something with like the military or like with his prior like experience. I wasn't expecting like sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like assuming maybe he was a Coast Guard rescuer,
Right.
dived in.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting. I thought he was
Yeah.
I thought he was like a diver.
And here you find out he's rescuing an entire country. He's rescuing an entire third world
Hey,
country.
he saved 32 girls this past year.
That's
I mean,
amazing. I was very impressed with the nobility of his work. I enjoyed it very much. I do wonder why we're not doing more at home here in the United States and why we're going out to other countries when we have such a big problem of in this realm here in the country. And I hope he's doing work at home as well. But it's definitely a very, very noble and dangerous job.
But I feel
Yeah.
like that is because the U.S. is like thriving a lot more than other countries. So don't you think it's fair that he's doing that?
In my opinion, when it comes to things of policing nature, I feel that we have a problem at home.
But we have a lot more people to do that here. Other countries don't.
I agree, and it's wrong everywhere in the rest of the world. However, as with Chrishell's infection, if Chrishell's infected, let's treat the infected and then move on to treating other people. So I feel like while it would be great to do this in other places, we should also make a concentrated effort here at home. And I don't know if that's what Tim does or does not do. I hope that there's an entire group of people who are doing this work at home because human sex trafficking is not just a third world problem. It's a worldwide problem, and it's something which needs to be eliminated. It's immoral, it's illegal, and honestly, it's just plain wrong.
It's very real. And but with this being said, knowing his struggle, does this change your opinion of him on like a top 10 list, CJ, at all?
Well, I mean, I've always thought that Tim was a nice guy. So I don't know, I still think he's in my top. Well, there's only like 10 people anyway.
Well,
so-
I'm saying if he was an 8 before today, is he higher now that you've seen backstory?
Like,
from him?
how's he
mean-
compared to Kenzie? Kenzie's still number
He's
one.
he's nowhere near Kenzie.
All right.
Kenzie is still number 1. Robbie is still like down there. Tim, he didn't really change my opinion of him. I always thought he was a nice guy. I just still feel the same way.
Katie, what about you?
I mean, I think sort of weirdly the same thing as CJ. Can't believe I'm like agreeing with him right now, but I
I'm
am.
right about a lot
Yeah,
of things.
I mean, I think he does something wonderful back at home. But I feel like as the show, I don't know, feel the same about him like as a player on the show. You know,
For
I
sure.
feel like nothing really changes my opinion, other than maybe liking him a little bit more. But
Matt, does it surprise you that they cast somebody like a former Green Beret on this kind of show?
Yes, and I thought it was actually really dark. You know, knowing it when I learned about Tim, that he was a special forces working in human trafficking, not just sex, just human trafficking in general, and knowing that he was out there doing that, I think again it was just they wanted to do something raw, something different, you know, and. Yeah, to kind of touch on something you said before, like you mentioned me as a cast filler or something like that, you know, and it was great because you know what, when I would watch the show, if I pull myself back from being out there and just watch the show, I would think the same thing. This was real. Production didn't know what was going to happen. They plucked people out of life and said, let's see.
There's a reason legal was there. Legal was there because you signed away your life. I'm assuming the waiver that you signed was a liability waiver for your life.
Right.
And they brought in experts to warn you, and the same way that we probably don't pay attention when we're about to take off in the plane, and there's a flight attendant expressing and explaining safety guidelines that are probably extremely important.
This plane
at the
doesn't
perfect
float.
time. The same thing is probably going on with you.
Yeah.
And the seclusion and precautions that ABC took, and the manner that they psychologically prepped you to treat this show not as a show, as very, very real.
Right.
And your experience was very, very real. And so I understand why all that took place. What I don't understand is why we have Green Beret, Navy SEAL, and Matt.
Right.
Race car driver Matt.
Why do we have survivalist, island liver, and Rashawn?
I asked the same thing. So I genuinely said, like, why, you know, when they found me, I didn't apply for it. I said, I'm not interested. And they pursued me. They wanted people that had interesting lives for that exact reason. It was a social experiment. It truly was. Let's take a Green Beret, and everybody was randomized. They didn't know who was going to be where. They even, to keep it real and legal, they used an outside lottery, you know, like, a randomizer. So everybody's bag was randomized and everybody's drop location. So nobody could ever say legally later why, they were put together. Like Robbie and Kinsey, that was real.
Natural.
When I talked to production later on and asked questions, they were like, the hardest part of this show is going to be convincing people it's real, because that was real. And that's why they do randomized outside third-party company, because everybody was randomized, you know. And even later on, I think as the show progresses, you'll even understand that more, like, oh, they should meet up, but they don't, you know. And so that was just magic, you know. Like, it got really heavy in Robbie in the first 2 episodes, and some people didn't like it, but it was like a documentary. You had to tell that story because it was so relevant. Even ABC was asking production, okay, come on, was that real? Like Kinsey and Robbie, and it was like, yes, that really happened. I know it's insane, but it was the parallel of his life and being abandoned was perfect, and it was even like, it was surreal. It wasn't even.
Did you feel like it was unfair that Tim, a Green Beret, and Matt were both placed in a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, my situation sucked in the beginning. You know, even talking to the producers, like, explain that. I was so you were allowed to pack a bag like you were going on an island vacation, okay? And as you meet Terry, and she describes me perfectly, and was like, even when they opened my bag, they were like, man, you spent some money. I'm like, I didn't even spend money. I just pulled stuff out of my closet that I have invested and spent time and money over to have, and I packed smart. I truly packed like. They try to teach me. They were like, they try to guide you. Hey, you're going on an island vacation. Do you pack snacks? Do you pack food? Do you do this? Do you do that? Pack those things. We might pull it out. We might pull it out of your bag, and hey, you might not get your bag, so don't pack anything you're not okay getting, you know, not getting back ever or parting with. So when I found Angel's backpack on the shore, and that was real. It was pretty wild. I'm sitting there on the beach like this, just kind of like, okay. This is not what I expected. This is not Tom Hanks Island. There's not much. There's like coral, and I have no coconuts anywhere. I mean, like, I was like, man, there's not a lot here. And I look over, and this was kind of funny. I look over down the beach, and I see a backpack. And I look at my camera guy, and I go, yo, the backpack. I thought it was theirs. I thought, and he just like wouldn't talk to me, and I'm like, oh, that's mine.
Okay.
And I go walk up to it, and it was just this crappy backpack that hardly had some dirty clothes. It had a bag of Oreos, roll of 10 Oreos, a bag of chips, and a couple little bottles of water. That's it. And I was like, oh, no, this can't be it. And I was so messed up for 3 days, I beachcombed. I walked the beach for 3 days thinking for sure this is like a supplement bag. I'm going to find something else. I'm going to find a suitcase because nobody would have gone on the island and packed this. And then I learned later of why he did or what he had. But yeah, it sucks. I had a decent little shelter, but it was hard. I had to go to shore a pretty long distance, like 100 yards, to gather things, bring it back to the shelter because that was the best place to sleep. So I was in and out of the water multiple times a day, burning a lot of energy, and had hardly any resources. I was able to catch one fish. I found a couple clams, these large ones, and I didn't even know what to do with it. I literally just got a fire going finally with these few waterproof matches that I had, which wasn't very many, and it was hard to get fire going. A waterproof match isn't what you think. It was damp. It was 100% humidity. It was a really, really difficult environment to get on with. And I finally got a fire going on day 4, I think, and baked the clam and kind of gutted it open. I was like, that doesn't look good. Okay, that looks okay. Yeah, that tastes fine. I mean, it was wild. It was crazy.
I gotta know, how did you find water then? Because I feel like that's something I've been wondering about a lot.
That's a great question. So the water, because a lot of people have asked that. Production gave you a little bit of water. I mean, people are going to always say oh, it's scripted. There's a Chinese buffet on the other side of the island. Let me tell you what. There was not a lot of resources out there. There was not a lot to eat. I think you'll see that as people start to break down. Some people got lucky and hit a jackpot, like Rich and Sawyer. They found 3 bags. They both got lucky and got their bags, and they found Kinsey's bag, and all of them have food in it. Mm-hmm. I found a bag that had 10 Oreos in it that I had to ration for 8 days, and I was burning a lot of energy. I'm a relatively small guy. I went into it with less body fat, less percentage than those guys, and that was, as you see in the scenes for next episode, that was kind of a topic of conversation and conflict, because I had hiked for a very long distance, 4 miles, to find these guys on day 8. I was depleted, and they were chilling. They had food, they're eating, they're catching fish, and I didn't have a lot of resources. But with the water, production gave you one thing of a very, very limited amount of water. It wasn't enough to survive, it was enough just to keep you alive. And it was kind of we don't want you to die. It's a TV show. We want this experience to happen. So they gave you a little water, and even said in the beginning, the special forces guy, he goes, you're going to have a little water, but it is not enough for your needs. You better figure something out. And there was some natural wells in the ground that later we find out, they're no, man, this was an abandoned, sad. It was almost sad. It was a fished out area. There was dead clams everywhere, dead coral. That my shelter was an abandoned pearl farm. It was a guard tower for an abandoned pearl farm. And so there was some stuff, later on I asked production, I had little fish hooks, rusted up ones. I go, oh, you guys left those? They go, no, those were there. They left a rusty knife. Some stuff was already left behind. They did truly, they searched for 6 months, different locations to scout this magic area, and they were oh my God, here it is. And so Rich and Sawyer had a well that was left behind by it was just dirt. It was a dirt well, and it was fresh water, and we would get it, we would filter it through some socks or clothing and boil it. But I was gathering some rainwater and stuff like that, but I was getting by with the little bit of water that I had. So yeah, production gave you a little bit of water because they didn't want you to die. And some people, as you see, Rashana and Tracy, they had medical issues because they weren't hydrating enough. Mm-hmm. So I found out later.
It sounds tough. The island doesn't really have a lot to offer at times, but what a place that does have a lot to offer is Afterbuzz TV.
That's right. Hey, Afterbuzzers. Our network produces after shows for nearly all of your favorite TV shows. From dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more, there is no network that works harder to serve television fans than us. But we need your help. The way Matt needed help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made for you, and you'll help Afterbuzz, that's us, continue to grow. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, don't be, because they're optional. So hit that subscribe button now for this channel, and check out our other Afterbuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments below, and we'll thank you on air. We love hearing from you. For now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV Talk.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. But so moving on now, we're going into the big story in this whole episode is Matt, Richard, and Sawyer. Matt, you found Richard and Sawyer.
Three's a crowd.
What? Go. Yes, sir.
Tehran.
He has a question.
Matt.
Yes.
How are you? Matt
Good.
Jaskol?
Yes.
Like
Rascal.
Like Rascal, but with the J.
Like Rascal, but
Amazing.
different.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here. Matt. Why?
Why what?
Why? Why did you do this? Why did you choose to do this? Why did you not quit? Why did you stay on? Why do you have no survival skills whatsoever? Why?
I think I have better survival skills than I give myself credit for. But in the world I live in here, the world that we live in.
I'll say this: you survived. So you're here in the studio.
Yes, I didn't die. Yes.
And I'm giving you a lot of credit for that. And
there was moments, but I didn't die.
you got better as the show.
Yeah,
goes
I
on.
learned.
You
yeah.
learned.
Yeah, I learned.
Which is scary. It's brave.
Yeah,
And stupid.
It was stupid. There was a lot. Look, I didn't want to do the show. I was approached and I laughed and said no. I said, hasn't this been done? Survivor, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And they said, no, this is different. This is going to be a chance to tell your life story. And it sounds like you have an interesting one. And they didn't really know. Yeah. And they sit down with me on a Skype interview for like almost 3 hours. And I tell my life story. My life story, which is pretty complicated and pretty emotional. And they go, perfect. And I was like, oh, God. And there was one time, to answer your question perfectly, she, the casting agent, who was also the executive producer, this woman, Laura Lester, she calls me on the phone one day and goes, hey, I need to know some of the survival skills you have, or like any skill trade or whatever. You know, my dad has been a carpenter. My dad wanted me to have a better life. I devoted my entire life from the age of 5 years old to be a race car driver. I started motocross at the age of 5 before I had memory. Started racing go-karts at the age of 10. I chose a path that my parents laid for me. And my dad didn't want me around the wood business. I wish I would have. I wish I had more. So I mean, I go camping, and I'm better than some, but worse than others for sure. And I was not as good as Rich and Sawyer, plain and simple. And so, anyways, Laura calls me one day, and she was just there building everything. It's months before the show, and she's like, "Hey, what survival skills do you have?" And I kind of like had a meltdown. I was like, "Look, I don't even know I'm doing this. Like, I go get a pedicure sometimes, like if I'm feeling myself, you know, like I'm a race car driver, I'm an athlete. Like I don't have survival skills. I can't make fire. I can't do this. I hate fishing." And I'm like having a meltdown, and she's just silent. And as I'm done, she goes, "Perfect." I was like, "Oh my God!" And she's like, "It's great. It's great. It's gonna be fine." A lot of it was my parents rely on me. I help take care of my family. You know, my father had a heart attack a couple years ago, and I took over the family business and
the carpentering business that you did not know about.
Right, that I didn't know anything about. Woodworking, hardwood flooring, woodworking, you know, and I was working at a racetrack as a racing instructor, doing my own life, taking care of myself, you know, and my mom was having health issues, and my dad has a heart attack. I leave my job at the snap of a finger. And so fast forward, you know, 2 years down the road, and a network wants me on a TV show, and I'm like, man, my family, I can't just leave. I said, I can't even leave the office for like a week without just, you know, stuff falling apart. I said, I pay the bills, I take care of everything. I can't just leave. And they said, well, you should think about it, you know, because this could change your life in more ways than one. And I went to my family. I went to my mother and my father, and I thought they would say no. And they said, we think you need to do this. And it was emotional, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going out in the jungle. And I had told myself, and why there's tension with Rich and Sawyer, is when I found them right away, as you said, why would I say that? Why would I tell them that I don't have any survival skills? I'm honest to a fault. I felt so bad. I had 2 Oreos left. Okay, no. I had 2 Oreos left before I went to go hike to find other people.
Oh yeah.
And it was a freaking 4 mile. I had timed the tide. I got beaten down. I mean, that was real. I tried to go through the jungle, and I get beat down. And then I try to go around the point. I almost drowned because I wasn't planning things out. I was just like, I need to try to find other people. I can't make fire. I only have some waterproof matches. If I lose fire, I'm dead. I can't boil water. I can't cook. So I better figure stuff out. I wasn't lonely at all. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. I was just alone. I was happy. I was fine being alone. I didn't want to find other people, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to survive unless I find other people, so I better go out. And then I got stuck. It rained for days, stuff that you don't see on TV. It was raining constantly, and finally I timed the tide and learned. I was learning. I was like, okay, I can't go around the point. I'm going to drown. I got to wait till it's low tide. I timed this stick that I had in the water, and I was like, okay. And I had a watch, this exact watch, actually.
Wow.
And then they let me, right before they kicked me out of a boat, the woman from ABC goes, Grant, look. And they saw my watch, and Grant grabs my watch and goes, it's okay, you can have it, because there's no like GPS. Thank God. It was a blessing and a curse, because I could see the days and the time, which sucked sometimes, but it also helped a lot.
Watching time slowly tick by.
Yeah, I mean, you would, oh my God, I was like, it's been 15 minutes. It has not been 6 days.
Yeah, because that makes me wonder what's the day-to-day life kind of like on the island? Like when you were alone in that for the first, I think, 4 or 5 days.
8 days. I was alone. They said 6, but it was a glitch. It was a a problem in
interesting.
editing. I found Rich and Sawyer on day 8. I was alone for 8 days.
So what's the day-to-day like in those 8 days?
So it rained a lot in the first couple days. So the first night, the first night was surreal, man. Like the jungle is loud. It makes a lot of noises, and
you don't see any of that.
Stuff that you guys don't see. I was just sitting there on that dock, and it was just kind of like, what am I doing? A military friend said, make it 72 hours and you'll be all right. I got to 72 hours. I was like, this is BS, man. I'm still not doing okay. I'm still struggling out here. I'm sleeping on the wood. I started having problems. I asked for the medic on day 5 because my toes had gone numb. Like I couldn't feel my foot.
Was it cold out there?
It was cold at night. It would get windy and it was raining. And some nights I was laying there and it would just start like sideways rain. I was like, oh man. And there was nights where I'm looking at my watch, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and I would just watch the sun come up. And I was just sitting there like this, just kind of shaking a little bit. Didn't really have clothing much or whatever.
Well, you had the dirty clothes.
I had Angel's clothes that he packed, and then during the day, I would try to figure stuff out. I looked around, I would beachcomb, because there was a lot of trash. There was so much trash out there, so you would find things and like glasses and whatever. The coconut glass. You called
Is that where you
Yeah. So no, he was
called
like
you out?
bougie. I'm like, no, I am bougie. But that's not why I was doing it. So you couldn't get, every resource was so valuable, and it was almost pathetic how valuable like every little drop, every little detail, and you couldn't drink a coconut properly without losing it. So I found a glass, and I was like, okay, if I use a glass, I can get every bit of it, and I can drink half of it, save the other half through the other half of the day, so that.
See, Matt is so resourceful, so smart.
I don't, because Richard and Sawyer didn't have a glass and they were fine.
You know what?
So
They were
you had a
eating
lot of rainwater. You had a lot of things to do. This psychological trip.
Yeah.
Because we all see the physical trip.
Yeah.
But it was very much psychological.
Extremely.
What did you learn about yourself?
I don't want to give too much away but I will say this, that I didn't give myself enough credit. One of the things you see in episode 4, which was emotional to see, was, and I start to, I don't even remember where the interview was. It was just my voice. I think it was an interview at home, that they voice over with that scene, which was amazing what they did. Like, it was hard. They were so brilliant, man. They filmed my life for 6 weeks. They asked me questions that were really hard to answer.
Before you were on the island.
Way before, months before the island. So there was things that you said about yourself, about your life, and then now you're changing. Now you're going through this crazy life experience, and now they're taking what you said about yourself and overlapping it with now, how do you feel about yourself now? And as you're breaking down, you're starting to starve, you're alone. I was more lonely when I found Rich and Sawyer. It was hard, man. Like, I am so lucky they had a hammock for me to sleep in, but there was nights that I just sat there and cried.
Because you were secluded from that.
I was so freaking, I was a tenant of the property, and I was not, and I was okay. I knew that. I knew that they connected, that they found each other. Like day 2 or 3, they were sleeping next to each other. There's human contact, and I was
buddies.
like, they were. But you know what? But you needed that. And then there I was, 50 yards out in the jungle, alone in a hammock every night, and I could hear them talking.
So you were sleeping right by them? You were a little bit away?
I was about a good 20. I would say further away than this room. So here was my hammock, and they were like right on the other side of that wall or a little further in a shelter, and I was alone. And you're in the dark 12 hours a night. There's no camera people, and you're alone, and your head can be a very emotional, it can be a dark place, and you have nothing other than your thoughts. It's so dark, you can't read, you can't write, and you can hear 2 human beings growing, you can hear them laughing, you can hear them talking. I knew they were talking about me at times, and here I am in a hammock alone, and there was nights where I not cry like you think, just tears, because you're like, and you had to find a why. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I going to stay here? Why am I going to keep going on? And I didn't know a lot of times. A lot of times I didn't know.
Well, you still had it in you.
So then, are you
my fan?
Are you still are you close at all with Sawyer and Richard now?
I talk to them.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to talk to them too.
It's casual.
It's casual. No, it's we talk. Again, I don't want to give away too much because we go through a lot out there that people don't, that I hope people understand. People are like talking about, oh, it's boring, it's this. It was real. We were things were happening, and as you see now, episode 5, things are going to start moving pretty fast, and things are going to start getting pretty crazy, you know?
Perfect, because we love to have predictions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just get into predictions
I would
right
love
now.
to hear the predictions.
Yeah.
And sit here and
Well, we're
laugh.
actually going to have you give us predictions.
Yeah, give us your prediction.
Prediction.
There we go. CJ.
Rochelle outlasts everybody. That's my
Predictions for
prediction.
next week. Next week's title is My True Rescue. What do you think?
My true rescue. I don't know. I need to think about that for a second. What do you?
I'll jump in. I
Yeah.
think Eric's gonna be rescued by Tim.
Oh, rescued by Tim. Okay, not off the island.
No. I think he's just going to finally find some people and stick with them for sure.
John, what about you?
I think that next episode Terry does not complain, which is
Again?
amazing because she never
There it
does.
is.
And I
Grandstand
appreciate
Terry.
it. And after speaking with Matt, I think Matt is going to leave Richard and Sawyer in a way
Maybe.
and find out, branch out on his own.
Maybe.
Hey.
CJ.
Okay, so yeah, I think I know what I have to say. I think Kenzie is gonna rescue Robbie from his leg, from his coral leg.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
She's gonna help him.
Okay.
Because
All right.
Kenzie's always on top.
And none of us think that Chriselle's gonna get off the island.
No, I do. I predicted that
You
last
do?
week, and I was going to
No.
say it again. I said it last week that I thought she was going to be off this
Eventually,
week.
you'll be right.
It's lame. It's lame. Yeah, I'm predicting it again. Next week is
Yeah,
Chriselle's
that
doom.
injury is not looking good.
I honestly think Chriselle has a lot more fight than I gave her credit for when we first met her. So I think she's going to be on there for a
CJ.
while.
Character development, CJ. Nice.
Me, I'm like,
Yeah, you're developing. There we go. And then Matt, not so much predictions, but maybe give us a little bit of a tease of something that we're going to see, but don't give away too much.
Yeah.
Give away a lot.
Give away a lot.
As much as possible.
There's a lot of very big movements that are gonna happen. It might not even be episode 6, but people don't just sit. Let me say that. People don't just sit and
Movement,
try to survive.
okay.
Some people did. Some people did just try to sit and survive, but there's going to be a lot of movement and a lot of things that happen. And let me just say that I don't know how many days we were out there. I can't tell you that, but knowing the days that they just showed you on episode 5, it ain't even halfway there. So there's a lot.
Does anyone
there's
get into a
lot to
fist
happen.
fight? Do we see any fist fights?
I can
I'm-
see you getting in a fight with Sawyer and Richard.
Look, Sawyer and Richard may
I
or
don't
may
think
not.
so.
They may or may not have tried to eat me in episodes. No, but
I told you,
That's telling.
Sawyer
It would
said-
make sense.
There's some. It was raw. Again, it was raw. And to tell people who are seeing this, production never told you anything. Once I found Rich and Sawyer, they didn't talk to me at all when I was alone. There was one guy usually. When I found Rich and Sawyer, we had like 2 camera guys and like 1 sound guy, and there was a little bit more communication. It was just about like, are you guys hunting? You guys gonna go over there? Okay, wait, we're gonna follow you. That was it. There was just a little bit more like, and again, they were only there like 6 hours a day, but there is a lot more emotional breakdown to come, and obviously it is an emotional show, but I think there's still a lot more mental breakdown and more stories that you think it's like an onion. It really is. You might think, and the whole point of the show is to teach people. Listen, when you think you know something, you don't know anything at all.
That's great.
And that was
Bam,
something
they
that I
hit
learned.
ya.
That was something I
That
learned
is
out there.
great.
Every time I thought I knew, I didn't know anything at all. And as soon as you do that, you'll enjoy the show even more.
Awesome. Well, that just makes me even more excited for the show. And we could talk to you forever about this
Yeah.
experience, but unfortunately, this is all the time we've got for
Bring
today.
me on again. I'm just in Vegas. I will drive here anytime for you guys. It's amazing to
Love
meet
having
you
you.
guys.
Thank you
Definitely.
so
Well,
much.
well, before we go, I'm your host, Michael Patterson. You can find me on Twitter at MikePatNews. That's MikePattnews. Tehran, where can we find you?
At I Am Tehran all across the board, and thank you so much for having you here on our show. Didn't like you so much on that show, but enjoyed you immensely here.
Thank
so
you.
find me and follow me at I Am Tehran on Social Atmosphere.
Katie?
Hey guys, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KatieWolski_. You gotta say, thanks Matt for being here, #1 fan.
Yes.
CJ?
You can find me everywhere at CJ Walker, even on YouTube. And yeah, thanks Matt for being here.
And finally, Matt, where can we find you? What you working on?
Instagram and Facebook, Matt Jaskol. It's easy to find me, Jaskol, as you guys see probably on the show. Matt Jaskol, Instagram, and I do talk a lot about the show. I do a lot of videos on Facebook and some video journals and stuff. So find me on there, YouTube, all the social medias.
All the
You guys will
social
find me.
Do
medias.
you appreciate
Chat it
being
up.
home now?
I do, and more so than I could ever. It's so much more emotional than I can ever describe. And again, hopefully I get to come on and even share more as the show develops, because the things that I learned about myself and other people, it changed my life in a way that I'll never fully be able to explain.
It's amazing.
Well, awesome. Once again, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see all of you guys next week after Buzz TV competitions, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.